trendy, expensive hotel, and you'll have to have all of that. And that was from Melrose, that, what's it called? Bush bulrush. It's a horsetail sort of plant, which was very, on the restaurant they did in Melrose in LA, it was a great design solution that hid the cars. But now you have it on every table, in every trendy sort of restaurant, in every garden. It's, you know, architectural planting, they call it. So the architects really have a lot. Even the great Arabella Lennox Boyd at the it's the Kew Garden Week, Chelsea Flower Show, when they give the great designers an opportunity to do these rooms. And in fact, at Naples, Brian Holly's great idea to invite some designers to do these large rooms. It's a tradition that they do at Chelsea when they ask people like Jamie Dury from Australia and the great Arabella Lennox Boyd. But even she's fallen victim. Look at that border on that lovely sort of otherwise zen thing. She's got to have the racing stripes. I mean, what's it all about? There was a wonderful anecdote from this particular year when Jamie Dury had done this sort of outback, you know, dingo barbecue sort of garden, and it was all out of like very expensive speedboat wooden paneling, and there were all these ideas, and the caravan park, textile curtains that were done in mosaics around an outdoor sitting area and so under trees. And Prince Philip and the Queen, the Prince Philip came around and he said, I think that's a dendrobium pinky. And Jamie Dury said, I'm afraid it's a dendrobium blues. I didn't come here for a lesson, he said. I didn't come here to be lectured, young man, he said. That got back to the Australian press. So I've just got a cavalcade of images here, just to, I mean, I think you all know, but just to prove, taken from magazines and things over the years, how far this new Asia look, which is just a formulaic look, and it is the enemy of our beloved garden, club, botanical, artful, natural designer world. What's that one say? Authentic indulgence, the expressions, the mindless expressions they come up with. Yeah, that's what Bali's become now. It's just really horrible. Look at the Buddhas as lightning rods. That's an enlightened look. They've got little Buddha statues on the microwave ovens. That's the sort of North Korean embassy look that's very fashionable. Everything always repeats. That's why I was a bit fussy about those pots yesterday. Once I start seeing things that are equally spaced dark brown things, I get nervous. The setai in Miami is one of the new Asian sort of looks. That's our friend. That's another one. I mean, look, it's just grim, isn't it? Just grim. Look at it. These are the top designers. It's sort of like letraset, the green letraset, the garden. It's always one plumeria. That's all you're allowed. There's more one plumeria. They must have sold out in letraset of plumerias, really. This is the New Delhi. The ballet in Bali, one plumeria. And the simulated rice thing, that iris, that water irisy thing. There it is, Air France's ad for Bali when they relaunched their can you believe it? This is Bali. Extraordinary. I'll just have a break there. Can you put that light on, Larry? I want to read you something from yesterday's, while we pause on that very relevant image. Something from the New York Times Style magazine on Constant Spry. And I used to coach tennis. There's Hardy Amy's in that photograph with Constant Spry. I suppose a lot of you ladies would remember Hardy Amy's as the Queen's couturier. And apparently there's a bit of a scandal when Terence Conran, who founded the Design Museum in London, he didn't like Constance Spry's beautiful floral arrangements. And he was a bit of a sort of, what do they call an intellectual snob about it. He called it high society mimsiness, which is as in miserable plus flimsiness, and questioned its suitability for the institution, which is really being a horrible, horrible intellectual snob. And the limp old question about the floral arts, major or minor, is still being asked, as it will be forever. But lost in the museum brawl was Spry's most important message, that flowers and gardens are an intrinsic necessary part of decoration, of home design, of environmental design. Many choked on the irony of Conran objecting to the exhibition, given that his retail colossus preaches her gospel, Constance Spry's gospel, and shares her goal of democratizing style. When you visit one of Conran's shops, wrote the poet and author James Fenton, and find some amusing table decoration, a nice little aquarium full of broad beans or whatever some zany and fetching assistant has thought up that day, all that derives from Constance Spry. It's a little bit like the spiel in The Devil Wears Prada, when that girl is being sort of intellectually snobbish about her choice of urban wear. This is the most famous architect's woha. It's just a tank trap, really. You couldn't have a child in an environment like this. This is Australia. All those beautiful, thank you, Larry, all those beautiful Victorian backyards of Sydney are being transformed into these yin-yang nightmares. There it is again, stepping stones, one plumeria. I rest my case. The Bulgari. Okay, so then there was 10 years of this, and I'm trying to lead a sort of rustic charm revival in my work, and I've been forced into India, which is really very difficult. And the same commandos who helped on your garden here have done this wonderful garden in Kovalam, a Taj Hotel. They've done 26 Taj Hotels, because the Indians still love artful natural. They love the English garden tradition. And at Naples, that's a sort of rustic charm revival. That's the ruinscape. It's looking much more jungly now. Naples. That was just a Photoshop a few weeks ago. Even Bali, you're getting a little bit of a return to keeping humour in the landscape. This village guy has done his sort of garage for motorbikes. And that's genius use of palapa, isn't it? And I'm sure if the Mayans in Guatemala still were in charge, they'd be doing this sort of thing too. They'd rise to the occasion. Naples. This was the house that you kindly mentioned that was in the Architectural Digest for Bob Adams, who has a vineyard that was in that Sideways movie called Smoke Sea Cellars. He's Mr. Smoke Sea Cellars. And he gave me a free rein to do what I love the most, which is vernacular architecture. So there was a Bali and a Java and bits and pieces. This was a revival. It had been done by Skidmore Owings Merrill, who designed the lamps that are hanging in the garden with me. After we did the Hyatt together, I forget his name, but one of the architects, so Ken Vase, who now runs the Marimekko shop in San Francisco, but he was a principal designer. He wanted to stay on in Bali and design lamps, and it was all a very mind thing too, so those lamps are a little bit SOM. And I went back there a few months ago and started to encase the whole white sort of Skidmore architectonic thing with red brick and lovely big slabs of granite. It looks rather good. It's a bit Franco's mausoleum at the moment, but it will get softer. There's some other lovely gardens around it. And in India, I've been reintroducing the Hindu garden traditions that the Indians took to Bali. I've been sending back to Hyderabad in particular, which has a desert climate. And the commandos built that because they couldn't get the right bricks. I mean, these are squillionaires who couldn't get the right bricks. This is it's opening on the 15th, the old palace of the Nizam of Hyderabad, who was for many centuries the world's richest man. And this was an English palace that it was done by an Italian architect called Falak Numa, now a Taj Hotel. And this was the Chinese garden that I had to recreate in the last few years with the commandos. And that's what you see in the distance is the main gate of the palace. It's a vast thing. It's like Blenheim. And this was a Moorish garden that I did for the Reddies in Hyderabad, Naples. I think you can see that it does sit within that genre of the artful, natural, tropical Asian, and then romantic modern. Because a modern garden doesn't have to look so loveless. So I did the book, Modern Tropical Garden Design, to prove that, and I went to see the gardens of Jacques Wiers in Belgium. Because I really didn't like modern gardens, because generally you can always see the junction boxes and the water's all wrong, and the gardeners don't like maintaining them because they're just not arty. Gardeners tend to be quite feeling people. And I thought I'd do this book and then I'd get some work, The few remaining people who may have used my services were scared away forever from that book. But I continued. The Indians kept throwing work at me. This was a private house in Bangalore. You know, in a modern garden, it has to be seamless, and you restrict the palette, and then you introduce some broad, brushstrokes of colour, but you still have to do it in a way that it ends up looking poetic. Yes, it's sparse, it's lean and mean, but it still is poetic. This was a big one I did for the Wellington Mews, the Taj Hotel behind the Taj. Very, very small budget, like minuscule budget. They were all... the one thing they do well in Bombay, the really only thing they do well, is waterproofing water tanks with smashed ceramic tiles, leftovers from building sites. And it's done by an underclass, and it's about $5 a metre, square yard. And they do it beautifully. It's called China Mosaic. So I had an Australian artist donate some graphic designs from his Christmas cards, and we blew it up on the photocopy machine. And you can't send it by email to India and ask them to print it, because even the mighty Taj Empire can't print anything. You've got to turn up with the roll, which they will lose the next day, so you bring 3 rolls. And it turned out very well. And what makes a garden modern is, of course, the artwork and the furniture and the lighting to an extent. But this was a very successful garden. This was the front door of the Bob David's house. I'm just showing these examples of tropical modern that is still romantic. This was the sculptor Pintor Sirait. And this is a new Asian garden I've done at Naples, just to show that it can be colourful, it can be whimsical. This was at Novotel in Nusa Dua. That was one I did in Palo Alto for Elaine Tajima. Again, gates by Pintor Sirait, but it's still got that Asian feel. This was one I did in Bandung, still very, very new. Just trying to get a bit of shapeliness into it. It's got to have that, the femininity. It's got to be seductive, a garden. That's a nasty Photoshop, but it is still a modern garden. And I showed the commandos that Leger painting. And I thought they'd do it, but they wouldn't. Exactly identical to the Leger came out. I could be sued by the Patrimoine de France. But they'd never heard, these Chinese gemologists had never heard of Leger, so I was safe in a way. And this is one of the lamps, and I just put this image as the last image because quite often you can get the flavour of a garden in just a little corner. And as much love has to go into a lamp and the base and the stonework and the armature and the planting around it, the Buddha belly, and those lovely little tufts of, what is that, Thomas? That little wild grass thing? That zoysia grassy thing? Yeah. I think it's a lovely combination. I mean, it's brand new, it hasn't grown in and hid the neighbours. Buddha belly is truly a great friend. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think you'll have to take a microphone around to the... Is there a remote microphone?
Marty is willing to take a few questions if anybody has a question. Yes?
As I found out before I even saw you, you have a very terrific sense of humor, and I was wondering if it is expressed in our mini Asian garden anywhere that you could tell us about.
Did you all hear the question?
Don't say I told you, but don't look at the sign to the Asian garden today. Sorry, I've got a bad knee.
The question she had was that obviously he's got a great sense of humor, and she wanted to know whether or not any of that was integrated into our Asian garden at the Botanical Garden.
I think there's quite a bit of whimsy in the carvings of the Chandi ruin. I haven't looked. Usually the sculptors, they always manage to steal something a little bit rude in. No, it's not. There's not any great touch of whimsy, but it's got to lift the spirit. It's got to warm the heart. A great garden, and like humour, it doesn't always have to be a loud guffaw. It should put a smile on your face, and you walk around in a sense of enchantedness. You know, it happened to me the other day. I'm in this good mood because I came out of India like spewing spleen, and I went to the Dominil in Houston, the wonderful Dominil collection, and wow, to see Renzo Piano's, is lit up, and there were lots of wonderful touches in the creativity. But we are now working on creating a little amusing, whimsical thing in the tool shed off the vegetable garden, and we're starting to do things in the roof and sort of little sneaky things. It's important that a garden has that ongoing, that dynamic, that life.
Another question? Well, I have a question. Oh, do we have one over there?
Very specific, but I have had the opportunity to walk through. Okay. What is the beautiful wood? Sorry about that. What is the beautiful wood that's used for the Thai pavilion?
The boys contradicted me when they wrote it, but I assumed it was teak, but I think it's Bankarai. It's just a hardwood, a tropical hardwood. It is a lovely wood. It's stained to look like rosewood because the Thais like that rich red.
Any other questions? Yes.
How did your family feel about you changing your name?
Did you hear that?
Incredibly, my parents were very suburban, and they weren't devout Christians, but, you know, they didn't mind. The worst thing was my parents came to stay in Bali, and I was 20, and I was coaching tennis, and like everyone does in Bali, you sleep in a sort of whole pile of people, and legs and arms are going everywhere and everything, and my parents took a room in a beachside hotel for about a couple of months, and one morning I woke up, and my father was rarely in a bad mood. He was a Pisces, and he was a very gentle man. He was a meteorologist, and he was in a foul mood for like 2 days. I said to Mum, what is it? And she said, well, how could you expect him to see his son in that mess of humanity, he said. But up to that point, they'd been very understanding of my theatrical nature, and they knew they couldn't rein me in, so they were great parents.
I had a question, and that was, what was your approach as you began the design on the garden here in Naples?
Well, we had a very good kickoff, and that we were friends, and the whole idea was to incorporate the wetlands. The theme was going to be the water, so that was easy to do a water sort of base theme in the Asian garden. I think, yeah, particularly Ray has, not so much with the Caribbean, but it was to be romantic. Everyone wanted arty gardens. We didn't want those new, you know, modern-y sort of things too much. So we were like minds, you know, thinking alike. There wasn't a big discussion about it. It all just sort of fell into place, really. Great project management, great project direction. It rarely happens. But it is a joy to work for botanical gardens because you're working with nature lovers who are knowledgeable.
Thank you. One last question. Well, I want to thank you so much for a delightful presentation, and I wanted everybody to know that we do have Marty's books on sale on that side. There's a number of different books that he has written, so please join us over there. And in the event, one of the books that if we sell out with one of the books, we do have book plates that he will be able to sign for you, and then you can order the book and we'll get that for you. So again, thank you so very much. Oh, and join us for refreshments or on that side. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Good, that went well. I had to go out on a limb with that hot flush joke, but I risked it.